Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and today we are going to talk about Europe. My colleague Neslam Nastijuan and I are continuing our report. He's already back from vacation. And we are telling you about everything that's happening in Europe and the surrounding areas. Today we're going to talk about the fact that most likely winter in Europe won't be that great. Why? Because winter once again threatens it with an energy crisis, and in these paradise gardens of Barilia, it will be cold. Why? Well, first of all. And last winter, as they are telling us here on the BBC, the European Union finally broke its dependence on Russian gas. That is, we read between the lines that they gave up cheap energy resources. What does it mean to give up cheap energy resources? Well, it's logical to assume that it means buying expensive energy resources. And here, that's pretty much true. We're told that America and Norway have replaced Russia as the main suppliers of natural gas. The winter of 26 to 27 promised low prices and a recovery in demand for European industry. But, as we know, something went wrong, and now we have to deal with the mess that was made. Well, for example, the wonderful Ursula von der Leyen, who announced on air alongside Trump the signing of a contract worth 1.5 trillion euros. 850 trillion is exactly for the purchase of that LNG and various other energy products. And on top of that, the purchase of weapons. For these amounts, while Europe is once again suffering from an energy and economic crisis, 1.5 trillion euros is just perfect. But in general, even this doesn't help. The thing is, usually gas gets cheaper in the summer. The gas Europe buys is stored with about 100 billion cubic meters kept in underground storage facilities. This is an example. Half of the winter demand is covered, and about a third of the EU's needs during the heating season are met. But now the situation is completely different. I think you remember what the Strait of Hormuz is, where Iran is located, and what the US is doing there. As a result, gas never became cheaper. The reserves in storage are at a record low for the beginning of August, about 60 or just under 60 billion cubic meters. The EU's recommended level of 90% full by November 1st is most likely insufficient. And if the winter is harsh, prices will rise again, and this will be another blow to Europe's economy. But talented leaders, they are everywhere, just everywhere. I don't think there are any more talented leaders. Right now, if you look at almost any politician from any country, the nonsense they're spouting, uttering. And when you hear these speeches, you wonder, where did they find all of you? Maybe there's some kind of greenhouse somewhere with representatives of these intellectual minorities. Maybe there's something else, but it all just looks kind of strange. It's an unusual summer. Summer is usually calm, they tell us. But now it's not calm. At best, the storage for the heating season will be filled to 70 or 80%. If the winter is mild, then nothing terrible will happen. But we all know Murphy's Law. The law of the buttered toast falling butter side down. And usually, if you're afraid of something, that something happens. In this case, it's a cold winter, which Juan and I, for example, don't like. We generally prefer warm winters. And now, suddenly something is approaching that causes the prices of petroleum products to rise. Last winter, buyers decided that Europe had learned to live without Russian gas. And ahead, there are only low prices, only prosperity, only democracy, only tightening of the PSO. That's a different story. But despite this, gas reserves have decreased somewhat. Right now, gas costs about the same, or rather it cost about the same in January as it did in January of 2025. Everyone was counting on gas prices going down, but suddenly Donald Trump became president. Suddenly the Dove of Peace decided to settle all the wars in the world. And yes, he calmed things down so much that now with Iran half destroyed as it closes the Hormuz Strait, the passage of oil and liquefied gas tankers is being blocked. Plus, on top of that, Ukraine is destroying some of the tankers from Russia's so-called Grey Fleet. All this is leading to a significant increase in energy prices. And accordingly to the destruction of the dreams of European politicians. The two main global producers of liquefied natural gas, the US and Qatar, promised to increase supplies to the world market that same winter. And at the end of this year, a mega plant was supposed to be launched in Ras Laffan, in Qatar. And until the end of the war, prices were expected to reflect a surplus of gas on the market. But now suddenly there is a shortage of gas. This has never happened before. And here we go again. What to do? Where to turn? Juan and I don't know. Maybe it's time to introduce the right policy? It's one thing, let's say, ideological wars, and it's another when it comes to the economy. It has to be practical and strictly so. Economic ministers must follow both the spirit and the letter of the economy. That is, nothing but the economy, nothing personal, only business. And in the economy there shouldn't be any we are friends or we are not friends, even with bitter enemies. If it's profitable, economy should cooperate. But today things have changed somewhat. As a result, with the start of the bombings in Iran in the early days of August, gas prices in Europe rose by about 50%, following the rise in oil prices. In response to the Iranian strike, 17% of capacity were destroyed. The complex in Ras Laffan produces 20% of all liquefied gas in the world. Well, that's just wonderful. This is a well thought out strategy. It seems to me that if someone wanted to start destroying our familiar world, they couldn't have come up with a better plan. But if you think about it, you really have to start with making everyone quarrel with everyone else, with wars between everyone, and with bombing communication centers. Well, since there are no telegraphs now and there's really nothing to seize, let's censor and block the internet. Then what? Start destroying energy infrastructure both at home and at the other guy's place, and in the end you get what you get. Unlike the oil market, there is no strategic reserve in the gas market. We are pleased by something called Ensofi Corbo or Corbo. To compensate for the losses caused by the war in the Persian Gulf, Western countries decided to sell off 400 million barrels from their reserves. The losses were even greater. And here we are asked whether we should expect a crisis. The European agency ESER, which coordinates energy oversight in the 27 EU countries, is confident that everything will be fine, since supposedly everything is okay. But if the war in Iran doesn't end, the heat doesn't subside, and new problems arise, then Europe won't get through this winter smoothly at all. In some countries it's not a big deal. For example, in Spain it's warm in many regions. Even in winter, even in the northern regions, the ones that border the ocean. And in some places there are little bits of snow, ice and things like that. It's not very good there. Well, we'll see. Well, for now we're afraid that we'll freeze. Well, those who are in Europe, I don't know if you're afraid of freezing. Write in the comments what you think. Yes, and subscribe if you haven't already. In Germany and in other European countries, everyone is sizzling like they're in a frying pan. First of all, this is the deadliest summer in almost 35 years, and not just in Germany. Well, according to the Robert Koch Institute, by the way, Koch discovered that very tuberculosis bacillus, if I remember correctly. The heat waves in the spring and summer of this year led to 12,000 deaths across Germany. There are likely tens of thousands of deaths in the European Union. That's more than in any previous full year since 1992, when observations began. And that's a minimum estimate. The real number could be higher. The worst period was from June 22 to June 28. And now a new wave is coming. I almost said a cold snap, but no, a heat wave, a real roasting. People are asking us about air conditioners, what's going on? And journalists are answering that they are expensive. On top of that, it's not even technically possible to install an air conditioner in every building. And I can confirm that, because in many regions of Spain you have to get approval to install an air conditioner. And that takes a long time. It's expensive and doesn't always lead to the desired result. Until recently, there wasn't much need for air conditioners. Most houses were built to withstand cold winters, not hot summers. And that's exactly how it is, really. Some of my acquaintances only installed air conditioners after many years of living in Spain, simply because they really didn't need them before. It's not because someone is poor or can't plan for their future. Honestly, this summer, the one we're having now, is hotter than others. And as a result, there is another blow to the economy. A drop in GDP growth and a poor harvest are being forecast. According to economists, the drought could slow down economic growth in Europe even more, as if there was already any real growth in Europe. We're being told that the hot weather at the end of June cost the German economy 6 billion euros. The insurance company predicts that if extreme heat periods keep repeating, then in 2026 and 2032, Germany's losses could reach $131 billion. And the GDP will drop to 3% below its potential level. There is nothing good about that, of course. 3% is a huge amount of money. A record crop failure is expected due to the drought, both in Germany and in many other European Union countries. This year's grain harvest will be about 90% of last year's. What's going to happen to potatoes and vegetables? As for sugar beets and other crops, that's still unclear. Plus, there's a shortage of feed for livestock. In short, the things that survived last winter and will survive this one will get more expensive. I mean cows, pigs, chickens, everything will get more and more expensive. Plus, on top of that, gasoline and diesel. All of this will increase, and as a result, the cost of living, real estate, and everything else will go up as well. Write in the comments how much, for example, food prices have increased in your countries over the past year. It would be interesting to hear. On top of that, shipping is losing up to 80% of its capacity, and fuel prices are rising. Accordingly, barge operators are forced to sharply reduce their loads. Due to the disruption of shipping, Germany GDP growth may decrease by about 4% to 0.4%. In other words, there will be no growth at all. Tanker ships can't carry their usual volume of oil products, so they have to load much less. And electricity in Germany is getting more expensive because Germany dismantled its own nuclear power plants. And other nuclear power plants in Europe aren't being cooled properly, so some of them are being shut down temporarily or put into standby mode. We have problems with transportation. And what are the authorities suggesting? Well, not much really. They talk about heat protection measures and things like that, but those are minor details. People are people, but if the economy collapses, far more people will die. A lot more people than the heat itself could ever kill. So overall, there's nothing good about it. And it's not just in Europe, it's happening in many other countries too. Some places are getting colder with poor harvests, while others are scorched by the climate. And the land, like in Germany and elsewhere, also isn't producing good harvests. Nothing is good anywhere. Maybe there are some countries where everything stays the same, everything is great, prices aren't rising, and there are no wars. But that's clearly not our reality. At the same time, when it comes to war, it's happening everywhere. I don't really want to talk about it, but it seems like nowadays every new country with alarming regularity, well, not enviable regularity, I should say, starts getting involved in conflicts. Europe is indeed worried about agreements between Trump and Putin. Once again, chaos is starting, and France, Germany and the United Kingdom are beginning to prepare their own negotiation format. As if someone is actually inviting them there. I'm curious, it's like in kindergarten, they start making friends. One group is friends, and the people, or rather the kids who want to join that group, are ignored, so they start making their own allies there. But then these allies fall apart as soon as another member is invited into that most desirable group. And here Putin is negotiating, or rather, in Europe they're afraid that Putin will negotiate with Trump, although so far there are no signs of that. Honestly, I haven't seen any predictive models lately suggesting that Trump is planning to negotiate with Russia. But somehow European journalists and politicians got this information, and now they are planning to team up with the sandbox against the Trump and Putin sandbox. So what's going on with us? They are working on their own format for future negotiations. France and Germany are leading the effort to develop a common European position regarding the upcoming talks. Especially Pachtagenos and Merz. I think he is a talented leader, along with the equally talented Monsieur Macron. They'll probably make the politics there really interesting. It's like something you should read in a humor anthology. Nevertheless, France and Germany are leading the work, and the United Kingdom, with its new Prime Minister, has also joined this process. But they're being more cautious to avoid complicating relations with the Trump administration. And European officials believe that negotiations with Russia on Ukraine will be led by the United States. But they want to guarantee Europe that no agreement between Washington and Moscow will be made without taking Europe's interests into account. As they say, as Zelensky used to say to Sibigo, that nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Well, now it turns out to be the same thing. Nothing about Europe without Europe. Well, that's not much. The root cause of concern is that officials are afraid of the consequences of any agreement for European security. Europe is currently financing Ukraine's defense. And it is expected that after the war ends, European countries will play an important role in providing Kyiv with security guarantees. What, they caught a whiff of money? This is sacred. That's why they are afraid the gravy train will pass them by, and only a faint scent will remain. A whiff, so to speak, of money. According to officials, it is also necessary to involve Poland, Italy, and countries from Northern Europe in the consultations. I think we definitely shouldn't forget about the three Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, because, well, such a powerful economic union as these three Baltic states is hard to find. You'd be hard-pressed to find allies like that. Then, thank God, some citizens come to their senses. For example, the council in France lifted the ban on social media for children under 15. Let me explain what this is about. This isn't being done for children, and it's not against children. It's for controlling the population. That is, if children are told they can't access social networks until they are 15, then passport checks start being used. That's how they find out if a person is 30 years old, or 16 or 17, by checking their ID. So you take your passport, show it to the officer or whatever ranks or titles they have in the armies of Europe, European countries, and you go online for 15 minutes, for example, and then you log out, and then you log in again. Logging in and out in general is wonderful. But anyway, the court, thank God, either hasn't been bribed yet, or hasn't been bought off, or maybe there really are honest and reasonable people there, which I would like to hope for. In France, they banned this nonsense. The Constitutional Council of France blocked the law that banned the use of social networks by minors under 15 years old. The ban on access for children under 15 to certain online services actually requires every user to verify their age, which is what I was talking about, before accessing the platform. The adopted law doesn't specify how or to what extent this should be done, making it impossible to establish the legal guarantees needed to ensure compliance. So accordingly, now Macron will have nothing to sign regarding this law, since it has been overturned by the Constitutional Court, and it will not go any further in France. How long will all this last? Well, maybe they will manage to convince this very court, or maybe not. Let's hope not, because this is a general trend. Regarding children, there are cries that yes, we need to protect children, we need to do it urgently. So what? And lastly, regarding oil and gas, today the great Trump announced that the US wants to declare the Strait of Hormuz its territory. Well, I'll call Mars mine. I'll declare Mars my territory. This is the territory of the Europe for Ukraine channel. That's how everything is declared, everything is wonderful. I hope, dear viewers, you are ready to pay 50 euros for looking at Mars in the evening or at night, because we are introducing tariffs right away. Jokes aside, what does Trump mean there? He intends to declare the Strait of Hormuz as American territory and stated on Friday, August 15, that this will be the territory of the United States. But not now actually, but later, after the final victory over Iran. Speaking at the meeting. At the New York State Police Academy, the president noted that currently the waterway is controlled by the American military. Why ships that are supposed to pass through this passage are not passing through it is absolutely impossible to understand. And the Iranian authorities claim that they are blocking the strait not because of shipping, as it has been disrupted since the beginning of the US and Israel war against Tehran in February. But Trump did not explain his statement about the Strait of Hormuz being US territory in any way. Well, he said it, and he said it, a wonderful person, a talented person, talented in everything. He stated that the Strait of Hormuz is US territory, just like Iran once claimed that the Zaporizhzhia region is Russian territory. There is also Mykolaiv and probably Alpha Centauri too. Leaders of different countries love to declare the territory of other countries as their own. But it doesn't really work out that way. Iran has demands for the US. 6 months after the conflict began, the world's reserves continue to shrink. Well, and Tehran says that a lot needs to be done on the part of the US. There are reparations payments, restoration of peace, and much more. In general, you can really feel the spirit of the times. And this atmosphere can be called as pleasant as the smell of money. It smells not of money, not of food, but of something entirely different. I hope you enjoyed our episode with Ptah Nezlam and Tijuan. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye everyone.
We are completely satisfied with our work, but unfortunately, our work did not bring any results.